Okay. Here we are. This is exciting. I think iOS beta has been going on long enough. It's been a few months, and I need to just let go of it. It's not gonna ever be perfect, but I'm pretty happy with how this thing is right now. I think we've squashed most of the, more annoying bugs out there. So at this point, this may be my last test painting before we go live on the App Store. So why not do another introspective dog for fun? But yeah, there's a ton of new stuff. I'm probably gonna do some sort of a overview video. I gotta make some screenshots of the new interface and new descriptions for App Store and everything. That stuff that's there has been there for over a year, so I'm very excited and also nervous because I'm gonna go on a trip to a lake tomorrow. So this may be kind of a dumb idea to release it right now, right before I go on a trip, but apparently this cabin that we're going to has Wi-Fi, so if there's any emergencies, I'll be able to fix it. Yeah, I was listening to the founder of Twitch has a YouTube channel now, Justin Khan, or one of the founders, and he was saying how like in the early days they had one engineer that basically did everything for the servers, and like if he got run over by a bus or something, like the whole operation would just cease to exist basically. And what happened is that guy was working super hard for so long, so he ended up going on a camping trip, and he's like, no internet, no cell phones, no nothing, and he was out in the middle of nowhere for like a weekend or something. And of course that's when all their servers went down. There was like some crazy catastrophe and everyone was freaking out, and they were like, oh my god, we gotta get this guy Billy or whatever his name was, somebody call Billy, we need Billy. And they were just like freaking out back at home. Nobody knows what's going on. And finally they ended up they figured out what address he was staying at, and they what did they do? They ordered a pizza delivery to the guy's cabin, and they told the pizza guy, they were like, hey, we're gonna pay you for the price of like a deluxe full-size pizza, but don't make it. Just go to this address, knock on the door really loud until somebody answers, and tell the guy that the server's down and to call us. And so that's what the pizza guy did. They found the guy and they got everything back to working again. Sucks for the guy who's on vacation, but I'm just saying I hope that doesn't happen to me now. I don't think it will. We will have internet, and I will be keeping an eye on stuff, I guess, here and there. But yeah, I think I do kind of need a break from this. My shoulders are like turning into beef jerky. Everything is beef jerky right now. I've been staying up late working on this thing lately, and I'm just so excited to put it out there and see what everybody does with it. And also, I gotta say thank you to you guys who are here for following along and supporting it, and especially for you guys who are beta testing. It definitely helps a lot. Just tracking down things and figuring out stuff before the before everyone else gets their hands on it. So yeah, thank you guys for believing in this project. Some things have been added just last night, some sort of last minute changes. Palm rejection has been improved a bit. So the way it works is a few different ways. So one way is that we have an actual invisible blocker on the side of the screen. So I don't know if you can see this. It's hard to see on the camera, but hey John, thank you. Thanks Will. And thanks Benjamin. So let me show you guys. So the palm rejection works like this. We can draw within the canvas as usual. We can draw outside of the canvas. From the top and the bottom, we can draw from the outside to the inside, right? And we can also draw from this side, from the right side in, just like before. What we can't do now is draw from the left side in, if you're lefty. If you're righty, it swaps this around. But basically, whatever side your hand is on, it prevents you from making marks over there, which is something that would happen a lot before. So now there's like an imaginary blocker right here in the area where the palm would rest. And again, if you want to change it, you just go make it lefty or righty, and then if I'm on righty mode, then it blocks on the right side when our palm is sitting on the right side. Another thing that's been changed specifically for palm or mobile is two-finger drag recognition. So before, if you were in the middle of a stroke and you started doing a two-finger drag, it would immediately end the stroke and go into a zoom pan. But now it detects that you are drawing a stroke, and then it says, okay, you probably don't want to go into zoom pan right now, so it blocks that. But if you're not drawing a stroke, then you can go into zoom pan. So I think this will prevent a lot of accidental zooming on mobile, at least. And then there was also a bug just like a couple minutes ago. Somebody was reporting that this drawing, if your tool has a custom size and you change the size, it would reset the size when you eyedrop because it wasn't saving the custom size properly, but now it does. And yeah, that's it. So I'm just gonna do a chunky dog here. Maybe throw in a couple layers. And then some other recent things, if you haven't been around the whatchamacallit, there's got some memory warnings that should help for devices with less memory. So when you're running low on memory and it's about to crash, it will at least tell you, so you know that, oh, you can lower the resolution of the canvas or just prepare your body for a crash instead of just crashing all of a sudden. So I think that's slightly better. And that's pretty much it. Oh yeah, one other thing that's been changed recently is that the tool presets, or the custom tools that you can make, the way that they're saved has been changed a little bit so that they are more readable and editable if you know JSON, which probably most people aren't going to be digging into JSON, but if you do know JSON, then you can go in and edit it on your own now. But that's sort of not a very common thing, so it's... Wow, what is that? Ooh, that's my pillow. I bought some seat foam, guys. Took like a month to get here. So my seat is not cushy. Oh, so here we go. This is one of the warnings that might pop up when you're running low. So say, okay, resize canvas smaller to prevent crashes. Okay. So I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. See how that goes. Now keep in mind we're running, you know, split screen and also streaming to a computer, so it might be using up more memory than it normally would. Okay, this water looks more purple, I think. And what is the gradation doing? It's going from like a little bit green on the top left and then a little bit redder on the bottom right. So let me try to do that little by little, just crawling over to the corner. Timeout over here. There we go. Maybe we could do a smudge for the reflection, but maybe really big and also low strength. And there's sort of a semi-hidden feature here, the texture noise, which only shows up on smudge tools, and this gives you control over how much let me make this a solid. Maybe we could add in I'm not sure about that. I'm going to try going this way with the brush strokes this time because I think it makes more sense because the waves and all the little textures and patterns are going in this direction. I think going up and down is not really fitting for what's there. Yeah, that feels more like water. Should probably do the same thing with this this area. Well, thanks, Danny. I hope you like it. yeah, guys, I think I need to just put it out and let it go. I've been holding it in so long. I'm just so constipated with this thing. It really needs to get out there. I think I'm gonna finally be able to breathe properly. Man. But I mean, this version is so different from the last one, and I can already think of some things that I could do better even from this version, if there ever was a version 3. But I feel like this whole process has been really good for just learning. I feel like next time I try to do something like this, it'll go a lot faster, because each time I build it, it's a lot better, I think. This orange is too bright, right? Here, I'll try some opacity here just for good measure. I don't know if Bruce is here, but he's been working on some natural media brushes that I'm also kind of excited about. But we're just trying to figure out what the best way to, I guess, distribute those would be. Like, if somebody else wanted to download his brushes and use them, how would they install them? And I think you could just copy the PNG textures and the .tool files directly in, but maybe there would be an easier way to do it somehow. Hey J-Ron. Is it easy to port it later to Android? Yeah, it's relatively easy. I actually am working on the Android version too at the same time. But yeah, so once the iOS version is out, the Android's going to be hopefully soon after. Because Android is actually a lot easier usually than iOS. iOS always has like little weird quirks. Yeah, palm recognition seems to be a little better. Not getting as many random accidental movements or whatever. Alright, and then up here, I think I'm going to try to paint these in, these little waves. It'll be nicer. I'm also trying to get the shadow to pop out here and there, like outside of its own silhouette, so it really looks like it's like displacing everywhere. iOS up, beta is, but I think it might be today, guys. Later on today, I'm probably gonna promote that beta. Actually, let me see if this is done uploading. I have a new one right now, actually, that I need to put up. Give me 1 second. Alright, let's save this and try resizing this. Maybe extend border. This is probably going to crash, right? No? High memory usage. Okay. Yeah, it doesn't like it. Maybe 1100. I want to make like a custom keypad for this resize menu, so you don't have to type numbers using the Apple thing, because it's kind of cumbersome. I actually like that this older iPad has a bigger bezel, and generally I like devices that have bigger bezels just because you can have a place for your hand to rest. But I guess, yeah, if you have some kind of like voodoo magic perfect palm rejection, then it doesn't matter. But also, you know, screens sort of, it's not a nice surface to leave your hand on. Like, glass doesn't feel that nice, I feel. I'm trying to get this wet here. Alright, let me upload this version that I'm using to the beta, make sure everyone can get it. Oh god, is it really gonna be today? I need to make screenshots and stuff. I guess I could take a screenshot of this. Be right back. 1 second. Hey Colby, so you're asking, have you been doing lower level programming? Well, the engine basically handles most of the memory. There's some garbage collection that you have to do yourself a little bit, and but for the most part, though, it's the yeah, I guess the more nitty gritty is handled by the engine. So yeah, the issue is iOS just it doesn't manage memory very well, or it just uses a lot more memory than every other platform for some reason, and there's not much I can do about it because it's sort of a, I don't know. I've read up on it, and apparently a lot of people that use Unity engine also have the same problem. So it's not just Godot engine that has the memory issue, it's Unity as well, which makes me think that it's more of an iOS issue than it is an engine issue. But who knows, maybe one day they'll figure it out. It is pretty annoying though, because it takes a lot of time, and we got to put in all these checks for the warnings and stuff for memory. It's not ideal, but it's what we got so far, and that stuff can be improved in the future, of course. Like, there's going to be a lot more work going into this moving on, but this at least is a good starting point where you can say, okay, everything here, most of the stuff you need is basically here to start working and, you know, enjoy it. So I'm gonna definitely have to do more optimizations later, I guess. Yeah, this and this stuff is also getting increasingly more complicated, where I need to keep learning and like figuring out what to do next, because it's just, I guess there's lots of little tricks you can do to optimize. But there's already a lot of optimizations in here, which I'm not totally sure how other painting apps do things, but it is a lot more complicated than I would have thought going in. I thought it was just like, oh, you're just drawing strokes on the canvas and that's it. But no, there's like a whole dance that has to go on behind the scenes to keep things performant, because our devices have such limited memory. You kind of have to pull a little bit of smoke and mirrors, like taking a screenshot every single time you make a stroke, so so we don't accumulate thousands and thousands of strokes drawing on the screen at the same time, because that would just crawl to a halt. So you have to take a screenshot every time and replace all the strokes with the screenshot. That way you can delete all the strokes. They don't have to render. You're just rendering the screenshot. But then that becomes more complicated when you have a lot of layers, because then you have to have a screenshot for not only the color of the layer, but you also have to have the alpha channel of the layer, which is a whole separate thing. And the way this engine works is sort of convoluted. Like, you can't just render the different channels separately. You have to make a separate viewport, like a secret view, a hidden viewport that renders and then puts that to a texture. And it's all like all this crazy stuff happening behind the scenes that is a lot more intensive than the old version. So it's been a challenge trying to make this version sort of feel like the old one in terms of performance, which I think it does now. There was some time where it was really sluggish because of all this extra stuff, but I think it's it's pretty close now. It's pretty acceptable. But it's just like any other project, I guess. When you go into the project, you think it's going to take you like a couple months or a couple weeks maybe, but it ends up taking you like a year. I don't know how you guys are with your projects, but I always underestimate. I always underestimate how difficult things are going to be. To the point where I sort of expect it now, at least, so I'm like, I'm okay with spending a lot of time on stuff. And it's like a painting too, like, you know, getting all the basic building blocks in is pretty quick. Like getting a sketch of the program in is really fun and rapid, because you know, you put in a new feature and it's like a huge different feature and the whole thing changes and you get to play around with it. But then now it's more just like you said, the optimization stuff, making everything smoother and just a little bit nicer, and maybe little UI tweaks here and there. But it's like thousands and thousands of little tiny things that all add up in the end. But I love that kind of stuff. I think I really enjoy like the detail of it. I mean, I've never worked on a painting that took me more than maybe a couple weeks. So this really is one of the few projects I've had where I get to like spend a really big amount of time on it, and I really love doing that. Hey Kirk. God damn it. How does that affect undos? Sorry, I lost track of what we were talking about. How does what affect the undos? The screenshots? The screenshots is what enables you to have a quick undo. Because imagine if you have, say, a painting with 3,000 strokes to it, and you want to undo, well, basically, if you have a painting with 3,000 strokes and no screenshots, every single frame of the paint of every single frame has to redraw every single stroke each time. So it's going to be very, very expensive. Your device is going to get really, really hot. It's going to eat up a lot of battery. It is going to be not happy, right? Because it's having to do so much work all the time. So what the screenshot does is you delete all the strokes after you take a screenshot. Then you only have to draw one texture, and that's it. Now the issue is, of course, when you're undoing, you can save a new screenshot to each stroke and just display the corresponding screenshot of the stroke that you're undoing too, right? So, you know, we can switch between the different screenshots easily. But then the next issue is memory, because when we take the screenshots take way more memory than the actual strokes take, like the points of the stroke. So the screenshot is extremely memory intensive. So we can only store a certain amount of screenshots before we run out of memory and the whole thing crashes. So what I have here is each layer, when you draw a stroke, it's saving a screenshot every time you draw a stroke, and it's also checking and saying, okay, how many screenshots do we have saved so far? And if we have more than, say, 5 screenshots, then delete the oldest screenshot. So at any given point, we only have 5 screenshots in memory. Otherwise, it's going to keep growing and growing until everything explodes, right? So it's things like that. You got to keep track of what's going on and make sure you're being, you know, tidy with stuff and getting rid of things you don't need. You know, on different devices, probably it's also challenging, because on a big desktop computer, maybe you have a lot of memory and you could store 20, 30, 40 screenshots, but on this iOS thing, it runs out so quickly you can only store like 5 screenshots before it starts to cry. So it's all like balancing act of trying to figure out what's the best compromise for each situation, and the answer's usually different on each platform too. So there's a lot of code in here that detects what platform you're on, either Android, iOS, or desktop, and it does different stuff depending on what platform you're on. But in general, like the bulk of the code is all the same for everybody, but there are a lot of like little special cases where iOS behaves differently from Android, behaves differently from the other ones. So are you caching undo screenshot and redo screenshot? Redo, I do not store screenshots, because redo is just drawing one stroke on top of an existing screenshot. So you don't need screenshots for redo. I used to store screenshots for redo until I realized you don't need them. Like they're just a waste. So I don't store redo screenshots anymore. How the heck does Procreate handle undos? I have no idea. Procreate has some sort of voodoo magic where I don't know what they're doing. But also keep in mind that Procreate is iOS only, so it's really highly optimized for iOS. And the engine they're using, I don't know what engine they're using or if it's all custom, but it's different, I think. I was watching one of your streams the other day, and you were talking about how you aren't that great with anatomy, but with you being a CCS car guy, how well can you draw circles? I mean, I'm pretty comfortable with circles, I guess. I think I draw them good. Is Blender your new X now? No Blender content anymore? Well, this has been sort of the priority right now, so there will be Blender in the future, though. I'm just focusing on one thing at a time here. There's other things too, like the engine has the ability to change frames per second. So what I have is a timer on the stroke. So whenever you draw a new stroke, it starts a timer. Or actually when you release the stroke, it starts a timer. So it's counting down now for 2 seconds. And when the timer runs out, it says, okay, we are in idle mode now, because we haven't touched the screen in 2 seconds. So now we're going to tell the engine to go down to 2 frames per second, where normally it's at 60 frames per second when we're drawing. And then when it waits for 2 seconds, it says, okay, back to 2 frames per second, and that should save a lot of battery and heat. You know, if you're not drawing, it's not going to be running at full tilt, because honestly nothing's happening on the screen. We can just We could just stay on 1 frame per second or 0 frames per second ideally, but you can't do that with this engine, fortunately. But yeah, that's also why you'll notice if you do a lot of undos. So I don't have a limit to undos, right? So if we start undoing and we go past the screenshot limit, let's say we have 5 screenshots stored, we undo 6 times now. Now there's no screenshot left, and then that's when we tell it we have to rebuild the entire layer at that point, at that stroke where we are at. So that will usually take a little bit longer, especially if you have, thousands and thousands of strokes. It has to rebuild it, but it will rebuild it and it will save that screenshot. So it's sort of like a hybrid of the two ways, where we have the speed of the screenshots, but we have the unlimited undo of the strokes. Because, like Photoshop and some apps, like, you can't undo infinitely, but with this you can, because we're saving the actual stroke data as points and everything. It's sort of like a vector thing. This is gonna be me in my little camping trip. I'm just gonna stare into the lake, think about what I've been doing with my life. What is life? What? Oh, here you can see it's getting a little bit slower to undo because we're rebuilding now. Can you save screenshots to temp as compressed data real quick to avoid RAM issues? I don't know. Possibly. I mean, that could work, maybe. Saving does take some time, though. Saving to file takes a considerable chunk of time. Could try it, though, and see how it works. You still keep thinking to invent new features? Not so much right now. Like, yeah, the first couple months of working on this version were pretty crazy. Like, things kept changing over and over, but I think now it's pretty calmed down. It's not too much new stuff going in. But yeah, it's more like refining and polishing and just making sure everything works. I think honestly my favorite part is, I mean, I love all of it, but I really like in the beginning when you have to, like, when we were figuring out layers, it was like, you know, this stencil button and the smudge and the mix mode, how do those work? Are they going to be modes that you just put on top of a tool? Are they built into the tool? Does each tool have its own memory of that setting, or is it like a global thing? Do we put those buttons down on the bottom? Do we put them on the side? We had the knobs on the side before. We had everything's been like juggled around everywhere, and we tried like almost every combination to see what feels the best. And that kind of experimentation part is really fun, because you just don't know until you try it. Like, in my head, it might feel, I might think, oh yeah, this is going to be great. It's going to feel awesome to have the buttons over here. But then when you actually use it, it's a totally different story, because there's little annoying things that might pop up that you can't really foresee. So, like, I don't even trust myself when I think some new feature is going to be good. You just have to try it, see how it works, and then either keep it or throw it away. And a lot of the stuff gets thrown away. But I think I have a pretty good advantage with that, at least working on this program, because I think usually there's two different jobs when you're talking about this type of program. There's maybe somebody who's working on the UX design, or the the interface design, and then there's an engineer that has to implement all the stuff. And I think some of these things are so tightly, they're so sort of, I don't know. It's nice to be able to use it practically to make a painting, and then turn around and make the adjustments that I need right away. Because I could imagine if somebody else was trying to tell me what feels good and what doesn't feel good when they're using the program, I wouldn't be able to iterate and hone in on it as quickly. And also, some of the knowledge would also get lost in the translation of somebody trying to tell you, like, hey, do this, do that, but they can't really tell you like how to do it in the exact way that makes the most sense for them, you know? I ran into that problem a lot when I was doing design for some toys, and we would have to go back and forth with the engineers and try to explain exactly what we wanted for the design. And that was a very involved process, and it took up a lot of time, a lot of effort. And I would say like 50% of the effort was just communicating exactly what you want. And even when you do communicate it and you spend time like doing detailed drawings and writing emails and explaining everything thoroughly, it's still not going to come out exactly how you want it, because it's just impossible. You like you can't just tell somebody how to do some of these things. I think it's very experience based, I guess. So I always really enjoy programs that feel like the engineering is done by somebody who's actually using the program and knows all the like quirks of using it a lot. I mean, because it's different from when you're just using it for testing, and then when you're like a power user, I guess, somebody that does a lot of work on it. We probably have different priorities maybe too. Because there's definitely like all these choices that go into the UI. Like, do we want it to be more accessible to beginners? Like, we want people to, do we want it to be more like industry standard so that people just know exactly, like they're familiar already with everything that's there? And that does have some value, I think, like being standardized, like stuff that people have already seen before in other programs. But there's also a danger in that too, because if there is an existing standard that maybe is not the best way to do things, and that just keeps getting copied and copied and copied over and over by every program, then you're missing out on an opportunity for something better. Just because somebody did it that way first doesn't mean it's the best way. So my policy with this project so far has been to keep it standard if it makes sense, if that's the best way that I can think of. But if I find some way that I believe is better, and it's a lot better, then I'll try to do it that way. Because there is a cost to being non-standard, because people are going to pick it up and be like, oh, what the hell is this? This isn't what I'm used to. Let's not forget this, and then they just like never use it again, right? So there's a definite cost to not following the standards. So I try to don't do that unless you really think there's a good reason to. But there are a lot of things where I feel strongly enough that I want to change it. Like, for example, this button here, stencil mode. On every painting app in the world, this button here is part of the layer options, because technically it's a layer option. You're making that layer alpha locked, right? So you can only, what this button does is it turns the layer into a mask like this, right? Every single app has it inside of this menu of the layer, or maybe a little button on the layer that's really tiny. But the reason why I want to have it here is because it's just easier to hit. It's a first class button, because I feel like this, you would use this a lot. Like, you don't want to go into a menu to press that button. And so I think it deserves to be first class in the UI, and that's why it's there. And the reason why I don't put it down here on the layers is because if it was down here, it would be a much smaller button. And I also like the idea of having all the controls that you're always using in the same area, because there's something to be said about that, because I had a version where the controls were spread out like across the bottom and across the side, and I found that it took me a bit of a second to think about what tool I want and where it's located before I started moving my hand there. But when all the tools are basically in the same spot, I just start moving my hand there, and then by the time I get there, I can choose which one I want, versus having to be like, is the stencil over here, or is it over here, or is it over there? So you're like just kind of jumping around a lot, and that takes extra thought to get the hang of. So I just like it if it's all in one spot. Another thing that's slowly been changing is icons too. I'm not sure if these letters will ever be able to go away, because I mean, we'll see. I imagine that even if I did switch these to icons, it might be even more confusing, but I'm not sure. That might be in the future at some point, at least making icons for all these different shapes that we can make here. So all these shape types might become icons in the future. And then I guess what would happen is whatever shape type your tool is, that's the icon that will show up there. But yeah, I don't know, we'll see. I like having the names too though. Yeah, but yeah, icons would be nice. I at least started to bring in some icons lately. Layers made me buy a secondhand Note 8. Nice. Yeah, the Note is the best tool ever. So underrated for artists. And yeah, Note is the reason why I started this project in the first place, because I was looking for an app for my Note. I wish Samsung would sponsor me or something. That would be nice. I think I'm gonna leave this one alone. Alright, save this one. Dog reflection. Alright, let's save it again. Maybe see if we can go higher res. I don't know if it will. Oh. Okay, cool. How did you start making heavy paint? Well, like I said, I had this phone. I had an old Samsung Note, and I was painting outside with this group called Warrior Painters here in Los Angeles, and I just wanted to use my phone to paint because it has a, you know, the Note phones have the pen. It's like this little Wacom pen, and it's really nice. So yeah, I just wanted to make an app for it, and it just spiraled out of control from there. It was originally just going to be for myself, but then people saw it on Instagram and they wanted to try it, and then here we are, like 2.5 years later, still going. It's been a lot of fun. But anyway, alright guys, that's it. I think this version is going to go up later on the App Store. So thank you for joining in today. Yeah, hope you guys